How has your day been going? Good, good. Mine could be better. The fascists have taken the square, and now the SS are moving in on the Volga. Comrade Stalin has ordered not one step back, and we have not taken one step back. Well, I may have taken a few steps back myself, but it was not a retreat, it was tactical repositioning. You will vouch for me, won't you? If, someone comes knocking. You will? Good, good. Well, I expect they'll be making another attack any minute now, but in the meantime, well, would you like to hear a story?
The Darkness of Light, written and illustrated by Ezra Warren Steinberg. No one really knows how or where it happened, but during the event we call Halloween, 2 kids were lost and 2 ghosts were found. It was a nice clear night with no clouds in the sky. The stars could be seen as clearly as the road in front of them, lit up by the full moon. The children, a boy and a girl, lived in a small neighborhood without many houses. It was wonderful because everyone knew each other, but something was different tonight. Someone new had just moved into town. An old man, if the rumors were correct. A nice old man from the city. He bought a house on the edge of the neighborhood. This section of houses was slightly cut off from the others due to the thick woods they were in. Looming pines and peaceful oaks lined the path. Small berry bushes, half trampled, leaned away from them as if they wanted to uproot themselves and run away. A cold wind blew in their faces and around their ankles. They approached the house. The eerie light of the full moon lit up the old den. It was a fairly ordinary house. Bumpy stucco walls supported a slightly rotting shake roof that creaked slightly in the breeze. A crumbling chimney coughed out a small plume of smoke as if the fire inside was dying out. A strong light shone from the partially open pine shutters. The only thing that was out of place was the long black fence cutting off the wilting garden from the outside world. The garden did not look like it was going to go anywhere, even if it could. On either side of the gate were twin silver skulls, installed by the previous owner for who knows what reason. They were hollow, and tonight 2 candles were lit inside, like twin suns. The light shone from the eye sockets and out of the open mouth. It looked as though all the light in the world was trapped inside and was trying to get out. The kids were mesmerized by its beauty and felt a sort of longing, wanting to stay there for all eternity. As they leaned in, the light grew stronger, stronger. The mouth grew wider, wider. The light was blinding now, but they couldn't look away, couldn't avoid the peril that had overtaken them. They disappeared without a trace, without a sound. We vanished so completely that the only reminder of our existence was the 2 bags of candy that lay on the dusty path. Twin wisps of steam rose from the ground. Everything behind them was distorted as if looking through a dimensional rift.
At last we are free from these mortal bonds. These humans so foolishly tried to bind us in. Now we shall have revenge!
The words curled around the trees, under every doorstep, through every crack. The words covered the entire neighborhood, like honey on a bear's paw. They seeped into every ear, yet no one heard a thing. Without another word, they dove through the shutters of the old man's house.
Oh, great, it's you, quick. Bro, I just got the best idea for a story. Shut up. For goodness sake, all you ever think about is Germans and imminent death. You're so boring. No. This is good. Shut up, or I'll have you executed for cowardice. Now listen to the story, okay?
In an old town, where nothing new happens and nothing ever changes, in a place such as this, there exists an old clock, finely made but dusted, not the slightest hint of anything out of place. You would think that this story ends here, with nothing of note happening. However, one night, something very peculiar happened. The clock had a single gear fall and break neatly in 2. And that's where the story takes a darker turn. How I found out about this, you might ask? Well, I just so happened to be on a bus passing through town, on my way to New York, when this clock struck the hour. And then things got a bit strange. I was walking to the hotel where I would be staying for the night, and my route just so happened to bring me by a winding driveway, at the top of which there was an ancient-looking house. I suddenly stopped, causing my fellow pedestrians some alarm, but I couldn't care less. At that time, there was only me and the house, and whatever was inside, trying to find its way out. The house felt like a cage, and I couldn't help but want to free whatever was inside. It wouldn't make sense to you, but if you asked me to explain at the time, I would have said the creaking of the floorboards was like sweet music, or the squeaking of the rats in the ceiling had a certain rhythm that called to me. Maybe the voice of the house itself was speaking to me. All I knew was that I had to get in, and nothing would stop me. So, waiting till nightfall in my small hotel room, I carefully planned my route into the house. This was easier as I could see it from my window, and as I was ingraining the layout of the grounds into my memory, something ominous happened. 2 shuffling figures dragged a third person into the house, and suddenly I heard a terrible, inhuman scream. Then, finally, the sun set, and I started back to the house, shaken, only to see 2 figures, similar to the 2 I had seen earlier, standing outside the gate as if on guard. How could I get around them silently? I mused to myself. Then I realized that I had seen the men dragging someone in, so maybe if I approached them, they would take me inside. But as soon as I stood, I realized that I had made a mistake. The men looked... No, they more turned their ears towards me and stalked over to my location, each of them grabbing one of my arms. I struggled, desperate to escape, but the man's hand was like an iron vice. They dragged me up the long walk to the house and left me at the doorstep. There was silence for a moment, and then I heard a mesmerizing ticking. Then, almost as if I was being dragged by the hand of some great beast, I crossed the threshold of the house and followed the ticking deeper into its belly. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I felt that the paintings all had their eyes on me. And had that statue always been there? The house felt profoundly wrong, and the worst thing was the ticking. It was like a hammer in my head. I thought that the feeling from the house was something trying to get out, but now I knew that it was something trying to pull me in. After coming to the end of a long hallway, I saw a tall door looming before me like the gallows. Entering, I saw but a single piece of furniture, an old clock that had a quiet grinding sound emanating from it. I felt compelled to look inside the clock, and sticking my head into it, I saw something out of place in this beautiful machine. A single, broken gear. Then, I felt a presence behind me and started to sweat. I knew with perfect certainty that something was at the end of the hallway, coming towards the room I was in, and I knew that if it reached the door, this broken clock would be the last thing I saw. So, working quickly, I took a broken piece of metal and bent it around the gear, fixing it together and slamming the gear back into place. Then, the clock struck midnight above me, and all went black.
Oh, hello there. How's it going? No, I'm not busy. Well, are you busy? You busy? No. Okay. It's all good. Well, I had a great idea for another story. Do you want to hear it? You do? Oh, great.
Up and a collapse. I'm not gonna lie. was hella scary. I felt the ground shaking under me. Although we were miles away from the mountain, I saw the shockwave come right at me and heard the windows of my car shatter. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, and I had the back of my head stitched up, and they put a bandage on it. The doctor told me that the shockwave had pushed me to the ground, hitting the back of my head on the curb and cracking it open. I thanked the doc for patching me up, got ready to leave the hospital. My girlfriend picked me up from the hospital and took me home. By the time we left, it was night. The sky was red from all the fire, and it was raining ash all around us. My girlfriend was worried that the ash would damage the engine of her car, so she asked me if she could stay at my house for the night, because I had a garage. Of course, she thanked me. And by the time we got home, my mom and dad were worried about how late I was. So I explained to them what happened, and they asked me if I was okay, and I told them of course I'm okay. And Dad cooked dinner, and me and Mom and Sophia sat on the couch in the living room watching TV. We watched the news, and we were all offended that the media had no coverage about the eruption at all. Instead, they just showed California Governor Reagan ranting some random crap about communism. Look, I hate the filthy commies as much as the next guy, but dude, shut up for 5 minutes. Look, Carter's a disaster, but do you really want some crappy actor being president of the United States? What's next? Some professional businessman for president? I'm still hopeful that Ted Kennedy wins. The next few days were pretty uneventful. We were assigned to search for bodies on Mount St. Helens. You see, I worked search and rescue. They made me take a few days off because of my injury, even though it wasn't really that bad. When I finally got the call, they wanted me at the mountain at 6 a.m., and they gave us these special heat suits that can withstand over 2,000 degrees. God knows what we'd be using those for. There was so much ash around everywhere. It was amazing. Trucks, buses were covered, even some trees and houses. Around 12:45, we found our first body. A woman, perhaps in her mid to late 30s. To be honest, it was lucky we found her at all. We just saw the car, and then we kept digging. And around the edge of the car, we found her a few feet away. I think she was trying to crawl out of the ash to escape, but she choked and eventually she died. She was the only body we found that day. A short time later, we had our lunch break. All we did was fool around like the idiots we are, having fun with our heat suits, setting each other on fire. Yeah, I know, super stupid. After the break, we were sent near the mountain's vent. Don't ask me why we were assigned to go there, because I don't know either. It was quite a hike to get there, but we managed it. And when we arrived, I thought I heard a screaming sound. I asked the rest of the crew if they heard it too. They did, but it just turned out to be steam escaping from a small crack in the side of the mountain. It made a really spooky sound, though. It set me on ease. We found a cave super close to the vent of the volcano. Believe me, we're search and rescue team in the world. Hell if I know why we still have a job. Just inside the cave, the temperature soared above 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Walking deeper down into the cave, all of us were making echoes just for the hell of it. I looked at my thermometer. It was 200 degrees and rising. We put on our heat suits and drank water because we were all super thirsty. We moved deeper in. I noticed the cave shaft had been straight so far. I didn't see any forks or turns in our path, so we'll most likely be able to get out again. But it was nothing like a normal cave, but shaped more like a mine shaft. We all just kept walking deeper and deeper in, like it was calling us to come. I know that sounds cheesy as hell, but as we ascended deeper and deeper, it got hotter and hotter. I looked at the thermometer on the zipper pull of my jacket, and the temperature was 660 degrees Fahrenheit. I cracked a joke about the temperature being 666. Everyone snickered behind their face shields. Just ahead, the temperature was 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It was so hot that the floor of the cave was glowing red. There, the cave ended at a fork. and in front of us was an opening 10 feet tall and 10 feet wide. We looked at each other and then went inside. And then we regretted what we saw. It will scare us for the rest of our lives. We heard screaming that was so loud that it shook the ground. We saw faces screaming and sobbing on the walls. We saw super ugly and disgusting looking animals that turned out to be demons. We saw a woman being ripped to shreds by wolves. We saw that woman being attacked by dogs. She was screaming and begging for them to stop. They ripped open her stomach, ripping off her skin like wrapping paper, exposing her stomach, intestines, liver, lungs, and heart. Her heart was not even beating, but she was still conscious. It was so hot that her blood turned immediately to steam, and her insides were cooked, like food in the oven. We saw men violently abused by demons. The men were begging them to stop, but the demons just mocked them. We also saw an endless line of people enslaved. They were all in chains, and demons lashed them with white-hot chains as if they got out of line. One woman was lashed so badly her spine was exposed from the white-hot whip marks. We saw people walking backwards with their heads tilted back. And when we saw us, they glared at us, and some of them gave us the finger. We also saw some people being forced to reenact their deaths. I saw a young man being shot by a robber, and it looped over and over forever and ever. We also saw a woman being forced through an eternally looping car crash. We saw tombs on fire releasing steam, and heard the people within them screaming and shouting to be let out. The extreme heat cooked the people, making them look like they're on fire without actually burning. Their black, crispy skin falling off, their blood turned to thick steam, their muscles getting cooked, hair singed and falling off. But the worst was the sound of their eyes sizzling. We even saw people cannibalize each other. Some people were even eating themselves. We saw people being shot and lynched. I saw a woman who looked familiar, and realized she was the same dead woman we found earlier that day. She began to cook and sizzle, and she, burnt to a crisp. We saw people trying to repent, grown numb to all the punishments they allowed themselves, to be torn up, abused, shot, enslaved, and succumb to even more terrible tortures. And there was something else. A demon that walked up to us, and it said, "What are you doing? Get your lazy asses over here and torture some of these poor bastards." My fear changed to rage. This demon, these things thought we were them. I'm glad that the rest of the boys restrained me from attacking this demon, because I know I would have regretted it later. We decided we had seen enough. And before you ask, no, I did not see Hitler there, although I bet he's down there. The most famous person we saw was Richard Russell Jr., who died 9 years before. He was being violently abused by a demon while ranting about segregation. It took us an hour to get out of there. Happy to be free of the cave, the night sky still radiated that hellish and disgusting red color. We took off our heat suits, now black from the raging inferno, and walked silently back to our truck. We did not say a word to each other for the rest of the night. When Sophia picked me up, she asked me how my day was. But she could tell just looking at me how I was traumatized, so she didn't push the question. The remainder of the drive home was silent, except for the sound of tires on wet pavement. The next few days I was feeling better and a little more myself again. Our search crew was meant to meet President Carter while he was out there to inspect the mountain. Unlike Reagan, Carter cares about people. We shook hands. Carter told us, "Good job, boys. You walked to hell and back." President Carter has no idea how right he was.
Hey, it's great. Dude, the best idea for a story. Shh, yes, I know the Germans are all about to go. So worry, don't. Shut up. Shut up or have you executed for treason. Come on, now. Listen to this.
The Crimson Temple by Graham Thunstrom. It was Halloween night, and I was putting on my werewolf costume when my younger brother Jake burst into the room, followed by my mom, holding a cute sheep costume. Jake shouted, "But Mom, I'm too old for that." After 3 whole minutes of her chasing my brother, she finally managed to put him in the costume and said, "Okay, kids, time to go to the party." I finished putting on my costume and got into the car. The party was taking place at my school. When we got there, I saw a man with a Halloween mask looking at me. He walked over to the car as we were getting out and started to grab something from inside his pocket. I yelled to my mom saying, "Look out, I think he's got a gun." My mom turned around and grabbed me and pulled me and my brother behind her. I closed my eyes and waited for something to happen. But nothing did. I opened my eyes, and what I saw still shocks me until this day. The man had a lollipop in his right hand, the same hand that had reached into his pocket a few minutes ago. But that wasn't the only thing that was shocking. He took off his mask and he showed his face. As soon as he did, my mom, brother, and I all gasped. The man was Uncle Ben, who we had thought had died in a plane crash while looking for a hidden temple deep in the Amazon rainforest. Before he left, he told me there were rumors that somewhere in the temple there was a long-lost artifact called the Crimson Fang of the Blood Wolf, and he wanted to find it in order to sell it to raise money for a children's hospital. I said in a surprised voice, "I thought you were dead." Uncle Ben said, "I wasn't really dead. I was captured, and they set the plane on fire to make it look like I really was." I asked him, "Well, how did you escape?" After I said that, I noticed a black van with very tinted windows across the street from us. Uncle Ben stopped talking about his amazing escape and noticed what I was staring at. Immediately, he shouted, "Run!" He grabbed me and my brother's hands, and we started running, and we all went with him. As I ran, I turned my head, and I saw my mom being grabbed by 2 men and thrown in the back of a van, with 2 other people chasing us. I had never been more terrified in all my life. After running for a while, we managed to lose them. We stopped to catch our breath, and Uncle Ben handed me an old folded-up piece of paper and a smooth stone shaped like a tooth or a tusk. I asked him, "Well, what are these?" He said that they were a map to the hidden temple and a key to finding the Crimson Fang. Just as he said that, Uncle Ben's phone started ringing. He put his phone on speaker so we could all hear. The person on it said in a deep voice, "We have your sister, Ben, and if you want her back, you'll do exactly what I say, or she's dead." Uncle Ben, in an angry voice, said, "What do you want, Mr. Wolf?" Mr. Wolf said, "I want you and your nephews to go to the Amazon rainforest, find the hidden temple, and bring me the Crimson Fang of the Blood Wolf. You have 3 days." I asked Uncle Ben how this Mr. Wolf knew about the long-lost artifact. He said that Mr. Wolf was also looking for it, because he is a no-good crook who wants to sell it on the black market to make a fortune. So we decided to leave first thing in the morning and take an airplane to Manau. When we got there, we managed to get a guide to take us on a 2-day trip deep into the Amazon rainforest. After about a day and a half of going through the dense rainforest, we stumbled upon what looked like a warning sign. The guide said he wasn't going to go any further, and we were on our own from then on. He said that some people have never returned from that area, and the survivors claim to have been chased by what they call the Blood Wolf. They believed the Blood Wolf was a protector of the hidden temple, and he was twice the size of an average wolf. We decided to go anyway, and after about 3 hours of walking, I felt like something was watching us. But I shook it off, saying to myself it was probably nothing. After about another 3 hours of walking, we saw something in the clearing. It was the temple. It was getting dark, and we decided to explore in the morning. I was fast asleep when I was awakened by my brother screaming. I opened my eyes to look and see him being dragged away by the Blood Wolf. I yelled at Uncle Ben, saying, "The Blood Wolf has Jake!" Uncle Ben immediately got to his feet, and we barely managed to get Jake away from the beast. I quickly grabbed the map and the stone, and we ran towards the temple, with the Blood Wolf chasing us. We saw an entrance and ran for it. Just as we passed through the entrance, I turned my head to see the Blood Wolf running towards us. But before it could reach us, the door suddenly closed. I showed them that I managed to grab the map and the stone while being chased. Uncle Ben suggested that since we can't go back because of the Blood Wolf, we will go towards the treasure, because there may be an exit somewhere. I told Uncle Ben and Jake that I had noticed a bunch of big scars on the Blood Wolf when we were being chased. They assumed that it must have gotten a fight with a jaguar, but I wasn't so sure. After a bit of walking and dodging booby traps along the way, we finally found a door. A bunch of wooden pieces were scattered in front of the door. We picked them up and found out that most of them fit together. After about 10 minutes, we were able to fit them in the shape of a cube. We searched around the door and found an opening the size of the cube. We inserted the cube, and the door opened. We walked through and found ourselves in a giant room with a big hole at the top. In the middle of the room was a statue of what appeared to be the Blood Wolf sitting on a pedestal. On the base of the statue there was some sort of text in what appeared to be Portuguese. Uncle Ben translated it, and it said, "If you wish to see the Crimson Fang, the Blood Wolf's fangs will find the answer you seek." We started thinking that it meant by the Blood Wolf's fangs. I took a closer look at the statue and noticed the statue had one fang missing. I took the stone fang out of my pocket and fit it into the hole in the statue's mouth. As I did this, I heard a click, and the pedestal began to rise out of the ground. A small opening in the pedestal was revealed, and within the opening lay the crimson fang of the Blood Wolf. Uncle Ben took the fang and turned to me with a smile and held it in the sunbeam that came down through the hole in the ceiling. "Breathtaking, isn't it?" Uncle Ben said. "Look how it sparkles in the light." The fang gave off crimson flashes as Uncle Ben turned it into the sunbeam. Something within the shadows stirred, and I turned my head to see a giant spider emerging from the darkness. It was twice the size of Uncle Ben and looked hungry as it moved towards us. "Run!" I yelled, and the three of us scrambled towards the door. The door slammed shut before we reached it, and we turned in horror to see the spider making its way closer and closer. "Someone help us!" I screamed. All seemed lost until I heard a howl coming from above. A huge black shadow crashed down onto the black spider, snarling and snapping. An inhuman scream came from the spider as it quickly retreated into the darkness. The huge Blood Wolf turned and looked at us with noble eyes and lowered his body to the floor. Somehow I knew he wanted us to crawl on his back, which we quickly did. He easily carried our weight and climbed up out of the hole in the ceiling. Once we were outside the temple, we slid off his back, and he looked to the sky, and a low growl started in his throat. I heard a whirring sound above us, and I looked up to see Mr. Wolf's helicopter descending to within a few feet of the ground. My mom was tied up and hanging on a rope just out of reach. Over the loud sounds of the blade spinning, I heard Mr. Wolf yelling to throw the fang up to him, and he would cut my mom loose. Uncle Ben launched the fang into the air, and Mr. Wolf caught it. He cut the rope, and my mom dropped into our arms. I looked up at the helicopter and saw Mr. Wolf pointing a gun our way. With a sinister smile, he said, "Can't leave any loose ends now, can I?" Suddenly, the spider appeared over the edge of the hole in the temple roof. It sprang through the air towards Mr. Wolf. Mr. Wolf was so surprised he dropped his gun. He scrambled back to pick it up. The crimson fang fell from his grasp and dropped right to us. I caught it, and we all started running from the helicopter. As Mr. Wolf grappled with the spider, the helicopter started spinning out of control and dropped into the rainforest. As we ran, we heard a huge explosion from the direction of the helicopter. We celebrated because we knew that was the end of Mr. Wolf, and we were safe. We thanked the Blood Wolf for saving us. He looked at us with wise eyes before turning and heading back into the temple. We hugged each other and started the journey home. Somewhere nearby, a dirty, wounded figure stumbled from the helicopter wreckage into the rainforest. The end?
Oh, hello. How are you doing? Still doing good? That's good to hear. Well, I think I outran them. So, while we're waiting, why not another story?
The Newcomers by Theo Raines and Lucian Hellmesser. It was an ordinary day in my sleepy little village. That is to say, boring. I was fetching water from the well when 3 men staggered through the gates and collapsed, exhausted. I wish we had not let them stay, that we'd given them water and food and some rest, and then sent them on their way. If we had, we might not have suffered the fate that befell us. Instead, all of the townsfolk rushed forward to help these poor men who had obviously suffered so much out there on the dusty road. "Alexa, go fetch your mother," my Aunt Gertrude said. My mother is respected among the other villagers for her healing hands, which have brought help to many of them when they were in need. I ran to fetch her. Mom was at home, making soup. "Well, Alexa, where's my water?" Oh, in my haste I had forgotten the bucket by the well. "Mom, I didn't get it, but come out to the square and see. 3 men just came in and collapsed, and Aunt Gertrude said to get you." "Well, that sounds important," Mom said, walking out of the house. "The soup will have to wait." Mom and I walked to the square, and she took a look at the newcomers. "Exhausted and dehydrated," she said. "Nothing for it but rest, food, and water." We took them to the old priest's house. They then proceeded to follow Mom's prescription. The next day, 2 of the men thanked everyone profusely, but the third was in such extreme terror that he couldn't even speak. I felt sorry for them. The men said their names were Tylo, Clement, and they said that the scared one's name was Ranfeld. Tyler did the most of the talking, and he jumped on Clement every time he tried to talk, verbally, not physically. Tyler tells us about how his village burned down when somebody knocked over a lantern in the community barn, and the entire village went up. He said that, as far as they knew, only the trio here and now escaped. By the end of this sorrowful tale, I decided that I didn't like Tylo. He seemed kind of shifty, and his eyes darted all over the place while he spoke. He pledged that he and the other two men would work as handymen for the village, and would show them things that would improve our lives to no end. End of chapter 1.
There you have it. What did you think? That was a good story? I think I'm still working on them, but, oh dear. Oh dear, run! Run!
The Night of the Great Feasting by Graham Thunstrom. I awoke from my slumber and noticed my blanket covered in drool and my pillow destroyed. I checked my calendar to see if today is the day. It was the day of the Great Feasting, or normally called Halloween. I was excited because it would be my first time at the Great Feasting. I headed to the bathroom to brush my teeth. Since it was a special occasion, I decided to use my favorite toothpaste, which was made with blood. After brushing my teeth, I headed downstairs to go to school. I skipped breakfast because I would be eating a special meal tonight at the Great Feasting with my best friends Stacy and David. When I got to school, I told my other friends that the three of us were going to a remote area in the woods near the school tonight. I told them we were going to have a special feast and tell spooky stories around a campfire, and that they were all invited. They said they would come, so I gave them directions and told them to arrive at about 8 o'clock. As the end of the school day approached, my stomach was already getting impatient. I kept reminding myself that the Great Feasting was almost here. It was only an hour before the feasting, and my inner beast was so hungry I could eat a horse. Soon the time finally arrived, and I was at the feast with all my friends. There were 7 of us together. Stacy, David, and I didn't eat. We told the others that we weren't hungry, and they could eat all they wanted. They ate everything in sight, and by the time they were done eating, they were stuffed full. We sat down around the campfire, and I told them a scary story about a wolf-like monster called a Wegabezra that lure humans into these very woods and devour them. They are 3 times the size of a wolf, with big, razor-sharp teeth, long claws to tear apart a human being, and poisonous spines along their backs and tails. About 2 years ago, 5 high school students went missing, and 3 days later 2 hikers found the bodies, or at least what was left of them. The sheriff and the mayor didn't want anyone to panic, so they kept it secret, but still kept an eye on the woods and anyone who went in. Stacy, David, and I weren't scared, but my other friends were scared to the bone. I asked them if they wanted to see what a Wegabezra looked like. They nodded in agreement. Stacy, David, and I got on our hands and knees, and we started to change into our true forms. We got bigger and started to turn black. Our hands turned into claws, our teeth grew and became razor sharp. We grew tails, and poisonous spines emerged from our backs and tails. Our eyelids snapped open to reveal blood-red, murderous eyes. The group screamed in terror and began to run toward the edge of the woods. We chased after them, and Stacy and David each got one and started to devour them, while I chased the last two. I suddenly stopped near the edge of the forest and waited, because I knew they had nowhere to go. They had managed to get to the clearing where the mayor and the sheriff were, and shouted that the Wegabezra were after them and had eaten some of their friends, and they needed to warn everybody. The mayor and sheriff grinned at each other, and then the sheriff pulled out his gun and ordered them to go back to the edge of the woods. I licked my lips as I watched my meal tearfully approach. Once they were within a few feet, I opened my mouth wide and pounced. Happy Halloween, everyone.
We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I. I've built commitments while I'm thinking of. You wouldn't get this from any other guy. I just wanna tell you how I'm feeling. Gotta make you understand. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna say goodbye. Never gonna tell a lie and hurt you. We've known each other for so long. Your heart's been aching, but you're too shy to say it. Inside we both know what's been going on. We know the game and we're gonna play it. And if you ask me how I'm feeling, don't tell me you're too blind to see. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna say goodbye. Never gonna tell a lie and hurt you. Never gonna give. We've known each other for so long. Your heart's been aching, but you're too shy to say it. Inside we both know what's been going on. We know the game and we're gonna play it. I just wanna tell you how I'm feeling. Gotta make you understand. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna say goodbye. Never gonna tell a lie and hurt you. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna say goodbye.
One.
Hello. My name's Joe. We hope you liked our show. Happy Halloween.